Hi everyone, welcome to week 8. I want to begin by thanking Group 1, Ali, Jillian, and Edith for their discussion of the readings this week and orienting us to some of the concepts. This week we're going to be thinking more about reconceptualist theory and how it interferes with dominant discourses in early childhood education. We're going to be thinking about attuning to decolonial practices in education through emergent curriculum and considering what is emergent curriculum and what is it in response to. So we're going to be thinking more with Marie Baptiste's article this week in your virtual collaboratories and thinking about some of her propositions in terms of the histories of education in Canada and how colonialism plays through the structures of education today as well. So let's begin again by revisiting the question, what is pedagogy? Pedagogy invites critique and develops capacities to act. So in this sense, pedagogy, as we've been discussing throughout this course, can be viewed as a distinctive modality of power, which has consequences for the terms of critique on which critical scholars of education and schooling rely. And that's an idea brought to us by Erica Berman. And as we've also been discussing throughout the course, pedagogy is that in-between space or that gap, that irritating space between theory and practice, curriculum and subject formation. So pedagogy is informed deeply by the theoretical orientation that you use to understand the world. Pedagogy is a type of knowledge. It's a mode of thinking that's interested in educating toward particular subject formations. It's interested in producing some kind of human. And in the BC Early Learning Framework, pedagogy takes a post-structural orientation within an emergent curriculum. And next week we're going to be reading more of the BC Early Learning Framework, but I'm sure most of you are already familiar with this from your previous courses. But the BC Early Learning Framework thinks about how educators and children encounter the worlds in which they live and how educators make pedagogical judgments about what is educationally desirable within a particular place and time. So they see pedagogical opportunities in an encounter and they organize further experiences to enhance the problems, queries, and ideas of that encounter to go deeper inside and think it through. So in an emergent curriculum is made through experiences and pedagogical decisions that are deeply grounded in the lived experience. So curriculum is not some static document that exists somewhere else and then gets implemented into classrooms. Rather, curriculum is made through experiences and through encounters as they emerge. So here, the teacher, the educator, has educational desires that are informed by the place and time in which their educational projects are responding to. So here, theoretical perspectives create what it is that an educator pays attention to. What are they listening for, and how do they respond? So educators in this post-structural reconceptualist orientation are committed to inventing worlds that thrive in multiplicity and divergence. They're situated in uncertainty. Yet they also must be intensely intentional in how they make these decisions. Because there is no prescription or step-by-step guide that lays out how to do emergent curriculum, educators need to be intellectuals. They need to be really deep thinkers in what it is that they want their educational projects to respond to. So educators and children in an emergent curriculum encounter the worlds in which they live, and educators again make pedagogical judgments about what is desirable. So emergent curriculum in this way is how it sounds, that it emerges through experiences and pedagogical decisions that are deeply grounded in the lived experience. But what's important to highlight, and something that was discussed in the article this week, pedagogical gatherings in early childhood education, is that emergent curriculum is not free or emerging randomly for children's pleasure or discovery. So the orientation of emergent inquiry within the BC Early Learning Framework is guided by particular theoretical perspectives. It's a reconceptualist project that attends to pedagogy. And pedagogy requires an educator that actively thinks inside an idea with children, makes decisions in configuring the educational experience so that it's reflective of the theory that's grounding the project and the project's commitments. Considering what is this educational project for? What do we want it to do? So emergent curriculum is not simply following the child or the child's interests. Emergent curriculum requires that educators are critical thinkers and that they don't only rely on policies or procedures to dictate curriculum, but rather curriculum is made actively with children, with materials, and others. So educators navigate this very tensioned space between theory and pedagogy, between the social political milieu and ethical decision making about how their pedagogies will respond to this. And we can also consider inspiration from Reggio Emilia in this conceptualization of emergent curriculum. So much of the reconceptualist work that's happening in Canada has inspirations from the work in Reggio Emilia, Italy. In early childhood education, we often say that our theory is Reggio, we're doing Reggio. But what we need to really pay attention to is that Reggio emerged from Reggio Emilia in Italy, and this was a response to World War II. Their educational project is a political action to rethink what kinds of subjects are being created through early childhood education. Subjects who question, who think and respond, not only consume and are easily governed into passivity or ways of thinking in the dominant group. So the purpose of Reggio was to quote, it was a desire to bring change and create anew. So their pedagogies are specific to a particular place and time. It's not something that can be scaled up and redistributed elsewhere. So thinking with this quote, when we say that we practice Reggio Emilia, it's kind of doing the very thing that the philosophy challenges. If we generalize this work or standardize it, it will become the same all over the world, and it will be quickly appropriated. But we can find inspiration from their intensity and from their message. So what kind of desire do we have in your particular centers in the places that they're situated in British Columbia? So thinking about what might we change, what might we create anew, what do we value here, and what kinds of conditions might we create in creating an educational project at this very time in the 21st century. So we can take inspiration from the attitudes and the dispositions and the orientations to education that happened and that continue to happen in Reggio Emilia. But we shouldn't necessarily say that we are doing Reggio Emilia. We need to think about what matters in our particular context. So this kind of moves us into an attitude of questioning our practices. So in this week's reading by Marie Baptiste, she highlights the colonial nature of education and the ways in which education has been and is a significant tool in Canada's ongoing colonial project. So she writes, as a cultural manifestation of society, education in North America is hegemonically distributed within raced, classed, and gendered systems. And in this week's article by Numalo, Vintimilla, and Nelson, taking a reconceptualist theoretical perspective, the authors are troubling some of the taken for granted assumptions about emergent curriculum in early childhood as perhaps unwittingly perpetuating some of those colonial logics. So they take a critical post-foundational lens to attend to the neoliberal, child-centered, and romanticized ways of understanding emergent curriculum that have been very common in this field. And they ask us specifically, how do we respond to what emerges and thereby sustain its conditions? For example, what are possibilities for cultivating conditions of emergence amid ever-present managerial and custodial structuring of early childhood educator subjectivities? So they're asking us, how do we move beyond managerial and the governing structures of the role of the early childhood educator in emergent curriculum? They also ask, in what ways does emergence in curriculum become co-opted toward neoliberal patterns of consumption? And how might this be resisted in curriculum making with young children? And then finally, they ask us, what might need to be unsettled about emergence in specific settler, colonial, and anti-Black places and spaces of early childhood education?